So hello everybody and welcome to Science Sunday for today, September 29th, 2019. I am your host Annie Wilson and yeah, we were going to colorize some data that we downloaded last week, but guess what didn't download? If you guessed that it was my files to work with today, you guessed correctly. So, yeah, now I really don't know what we're going to do. Astro YYZ asks, for anyone who missed the SpaceX thing last night, NASA spaceflight has a good rundown. Mods okay to post link? Yes, please post the link. In fact, if there's a video, we can try to run the video, because I don't even know. Y'all. Tink's like, give me more. Oh, that's a... I'm scrolling through it. But yeah, it's a cool article. And make it rain, Puck and Tinker. Okay, so... now I'm just annoyed. Well, the files are still in my checkout cart. Yeah, no, if somebody can find the, find a video of that for that, we'll totally watch it together because I done screwed up. I don't even know how to catch these files. Because I went to go open it and it's like, no, you don't get it. Yeah, I totally tech failed. And I'm looking at my last multi-part download and it looks like I downloaded everything from Mast. So, you know what? Let's go to Mast and pull up the same files. I should probably have this going on. All right. You have no idea how annoyed I am at myself. So we know that it is... Are these multiple proposals? These look like they might actually be multiple proposals. Crap. Yeah, these are multiple proposals. Oh, look at that. Look at that. That's fun. Does anybody remember the name of the thing we were trying to get? Or does anybody have another one? Because we can just start over from the beginning. Because, yeah. Let's do a random search and see what we get. Oh, that's actually kind of pretty. I don't know what it is. Oh, wait, that's our Milky Way, isn't it? Now I feel kind of silly. Just close your eyes and do a random point at the screen. Okay. I mean, we should actually probably narrow down. Let's do Hubble source catalog and a random search. Oh, that's a not. There we go. Yeah, it does. It really does take a computer to really foul things up. All right, to make myself more comfortable, I'm gonna drag this over to my other screen. Oh, we forgot to turn the music back on. Well, I have an easy way to fix that. Oh my goodness. Each of these... Each of these squares is an observation. Which I just think is wild. It's gonna take a second to catch up because I just asked it to do a bunch of stuff. All right, there's not a lot of filters, which is not at all what I'm looking for. I want something with a lot of filters. So let's do another random search. This is not working out well. All right, so let's do... I don't know what the difference is between 2 and 3 for the source catalog. Hey, Sammy, I am having a tech flail because I done screwed up. All right, we'll just go back to HLA and we'll go back to, yep, clear form and results. Empty my cart. There we go. That's what I wanted. Okay, so I can't do a random search. That's what I don't like about this. Hey, Tink. Have you tried turning it off and on again? I thought about it. I really did. Hey, Wayne. And make it rain! Thank you for the bits, Wayne. I thought about it. This is definitely one of those times when I'm like, all right, but seriously, y'all want to, if you all want to toss out random things to look at, go for it. It's not gonna search like that. I already cleared the cart and I don't even remember what we were looking at last time. Hey! Hey, this is pretty. Have we done this one? NGC 4038. I don't think we have done NGC 4038. Yeah, it was a nebula that we were doing. All right, so let me do NGC 4038. I'm most comfortable with galaxies. I think NGC 4038. I think that's going to be how it goes because I'm looking at, this is what caught my eye. I know it's got that weird thing going on. Problem is that I don't know if they're all the same. All from the same observation. They look like they're all from the same observation. But I don't know. Like this. And this. I mean, that's... The computer made the color. We might as well download that. This. 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 They all look the same. Oh my goodness, there's like 260 pages. Or 260 images. One ratios. I mean, it happens. And then these ones are pretty too. These ones might actually be better because it has the whole thing. All right, so let me, how do I unselect everything? Reset selection. You're gonna do the thing? There we go. Or was it? It was further on down. Boop, boop, boop. Boop, boop, boop. It does kind of look like a secret spy plane, doesn't it, YYZ? How it just kind of, you know, I think it is kind of weird how it's just like the 3 chips that are all the same size and then that little chip, and they're like, yeah, this is what it is. This is what it is. I like these ones though because they're already combined, which means they've probably already been drizzled. And it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of like extra stuff for me to do. And looking at the file names, yeah, these are different. Hey, Larry. Yeah, interacting galaxies are pretty cool. And then there's like 2 more pages of these. What is drizzled? It is the term where they take a bunch, because they take a bunch of exposures, right? And usually the data that I download are these exposures that have been stacked together and drizzled. I can't exactly remember what the process does other than it it aligns the images, it kind of adds brightnesses, it gets rid of the chip lines, the chip gaps, and I think it does some mathy stuff to the images as well. Yes, Tinker, I hear you. And there's actually what is it? It was in IRAF. It was a package called Drizzle Pack that did a lot of this. But they no longer use IRAF, and I don't have PyRAF going on my machine. Yeah, it sticks the images together. It is the very initial processing. Like Dr. Pamela says, that I do data reduction. To me, the drizzle is that first data reduction. And I think when she tells people that I do data reduction on Hubble images, that only makes sense to people that are like really into astronomy. I like to say that I colorize them because I feel that it expands the understandability of what I'm doing to include more people. Because A, not everybody knows that Hubble images come down in black and white. And B, once I explain that they come down in grayscale, it's easy to be like, okay, I assign one color to each layer and boom, there you go. So, yeah, that's how I explain it. So I'm not sure what this one is. It might be the total. And this one has 1, 2, 3. So this particular combination image does not have the narrowband included. It has, this wideband, it has this wideband, and it has this medium band, but it doesn't have this narrow band included. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and essentially do all of those. So I'm trying to think of how we want to do this. Do we want to roll a video while I'm downloading, or what do y'all want to do? Just listen to me meander on and chat? I guess I could look for a video real quick. What you doing, Puck? You're getting in trouble. It is totally like... yeah. There's the Starship update that's an hour and a half long. One place, a channel that I'm not familiar with that says I need more, that's called I Need More Space, has the whole announcement in 8 minutes. Yeah, I kind of want food. Videos from space has a couple ones. There's a short video here. I know, Tinker, I hear you. Alright, so some pizza places will actually not allow you to order anchovies. Alright. This is a very short video. Can I make it full screen? There you go. Yeah, it kind of did look like... We'll play it again because I was setting up the download. This time I'll talk over it. So this is all probably mostly CGI because they don't actually have the whole thing built yet. This takeoff is definitely CGI. Still pretty though. And I'm imagining that's the MECO, main engine cutoff, and then the separation, the first stage. And because it's SpaceX, I would not be surprised if the first stage, returns to Earth because SpaceX. Yep, there it goes. There it is. Landing way perfectly right on the bullseye. And that looks like that might be second stage cutoff. And this is the part about SpaceX making babies where it's coming to refuel. So they're planning to refuel in orbit. So they have to launch both of these things up there? Like, part of me is like, how does that even work? Does it just stay up there? And it just goes off into the distance. Okay. Okay. There is that. Let me see if I can find what looks like a decent video. Hey, shh. Are you done? Are you done? Are you done? All right. Let's see what SpaceX has on their YouTube channel. The really long Starship update, which I will pull it onto the screen that you can see in a second. That did not work as how I wanted it to. Come on. Nope, nope, nope. Stop playing.
Quite windy here. It's tied down well, though. This is. I actually wasn't expecting it to be this windy. Hopefully, you can actually hear what I'm saying. Okay, great, great. This is I think the most inspiring thing that I've ever seen, and I'd just like to thank the SpaceX team and the suppliers and the people of Boca Chica and Brownsville. Thank you for your support, and just like, wow, what an incredible job by such a great team to build this incredible vehicle. This is basically the holy grail of space, and the fundamental thing that's required. And it is a very hard thing to do. It's only barely possible.
We're going to skip ahead through this because this is an hour and 25 minutes long.
I mean, if Earth's gravity was a little heavier, it would be successfully landed the rocket. So
that's the whole stacked prototype behind him.
Slide, we can take a look at. This is Grasshopper. That's actually Falcon 9. It's hard to tell the scale, but that's a Falcon 9 size booster with one engine and big legs with giant shock absorbers, because we didn't know what the heck we were doing. Now, amazingly, Grasshopper had zero crashes. Grasshopper is still alive.
But her friend is nowhere to be seen.
I don't even know what this is.
Now she walks through her sunken dream to the seat with the clearest view, and she's hooked to the silver screen.
The next slide. So, yeah. And aspirationally, the target is a 380-second ISP for the vacuum engine. But this is a very, in sort of space geek terms, this is like really a great number. And even for the steel engines to get over
blah blah blah.
Like at first it feels like, oh, it's steel. Does that mean it's heavy? No, actually it's the lightest construction. Steel is the best thing, I think the best thing about, best design decision on this whole thing is a 301 stainless steel. Because at cryogenic temperatures, a 301 stainless actually has about the same effective strength as an advanced aluminum. unlike most steels, which get brittle at low temperature, 301 stainless gets much stronger. And if it's in the extra hard condition, meaning it's cold rolled to extra hard condition, it also gets way stronger. So its strength to weight ratio at cryogenic temperatures is equivalent or even perhaps slightly better than advanced composites or aluminum lithium. So this is not well appreciated, because if you just look at the materials manual and say, like, what is the strength of stainless steel?
And this is what I was interested in.
It looks much weaker than it is. You say, what is the strength at cryogenic temperature? Oh, much stronger. At very low temperature, almost twice as strong. That's when it becomes better than carbon fiber or aluminum lithium. And there's another benefit. It also has a high melting temperature. So for a reusable ship, you're coming in like a meteor. You want something that does not melt at a low temperature. You want something that melts at a high temperature. And this is where steel is extremely good as well. So it's, steel has a melting temperature around sort of 1,500 degrees centigrade, whereas aluminum, maybe 300 or 400 degrees. And same thing for carbon fiber, and that's really pushing it. This is having that much higher melting temperature means that you don't need any shielding on the leeward side of the ship when it comes in for entry. And the shielding you need on the windward side, the hot side, is massively reduced, because the thickness of the tile is actually, for a reusable system, is dependent on what back shell temperature, like how hot does the back of the tile that interfaces with the airframe get. And because the steel can take a much higher temperature, your heat shield, even on the windward side, is much lighter. The net effect is that a 301 stainless steel rocket is actually the lightest possible reusable architecture. Then it comes to cost. The carbon fiber we were using was $130 a ton. The steel is $2,500 a ton. Sorry. Yeah, 25. The $130,000 a ton versus $2,500 a ton. That makes more sense. So it's $130,000 a ton for the carbon fiber, and $2,500 a ton for the steel. So the steel is about 2% of the cost of the carbon fiber. So it's a good thing we changed from carbon fiber to steel, by far. It's very easy to weld stainless steel. The evidence being that we welded it outdoors without a factory. So, great skills by the team, but with carbon fiber this is impossible. With aluminum lithium, also impossible. But steel is easy to weld, and it is resilient to the elements. And also, actually, as talking with Austin earlier, he say, like, on Mars, you can like cut that up, you can weld it, you can modify it, no problem. Yeah, that's a good point. You're out there on the moon or Mars. You want something that you can modify, that you can cut up and use for other things. That's like for sure a great thing. So anyway, steel. Obviously, I'm in love with steel. It's time I had to say it. So great. So let's see. Going on to the booster. So the booster is designed to take up to 37 Raptor engines. I'm not sure if we'll go that high, but you can really, have 31. I think like the minimum number you'd want is, maybe around 24. But the booster is designed to be able to take multiple engines out. So you can actually add or subtract engines as you'd like. You basically just need a lot of force pushing up. Over time, I think you probably want around a 7,500 ton force rocket, which is about twice the thrust of a Saturn V, a little more than twice the thrust. And on a roughly 5,000 ton gross liftoff mass. So for roughly 1.5 thrust to weight. For a reusable rocket, you actually want a high thrust to weight rather than with an expendable rocket where you want a low thrust to weight. Because any thrust to weight below 1 is not useful. Like if you have less thrust than your weight, you don't move. So you actually want a high thrust to weight for a reusable rocket. This is a very important design optimization change. So that's why I think more engines is probably good, and getting up to around 7,500 tons over time, and a 1.5 thrust to weight ratio, or more. So, and we think we're probably going to adjust the grid fin design to be kind of like more of like a diamond shape. It looks cooler, and it works better too. And then the rear fins are actually just legs, so they're not needed for stabilization or guidance. They're essentially there for legs. All right, so let's go into some of the development testing. This is a Raptor firing. All right, and then obviously we had a Raptor fire on the Starhopper. Yeah. And it's kind of hard to see to appreciate scale, but it's the same diameter as Starship, and obviously it's just right over there. So it's kind of hard to tell if it's the size of a trash can or how big it is. But it's about the body diameter is about 9 meters or 30 feet, not including the leg span. So this gives you a sense of size. So the little pixels there, little pixels are a human. And then there's the Hopper next to it, the Millennium Falcon for comparison. Then Starship, which is what you see before you. And then that's what it will look like with the full stack, which is almost 2.5 times as tall as this vehicle. This simulation will give you a sense of the scale of things.
Yeah, that mixed.
It slightly reminds me of the scene from Spaceball.
Mixed media is on this is amazing. I know it's all digital media, but still it's mixed. So I think this is the same video we watched earlier a couple times. It looks like it's the same video. I'm just gonna let it play again. The download is finished. I can't quite see what time it is. Oh, it's 1:40. Wow, that time just really kind of slid past us, didn't it? I'm okay with this. Oh, it is the same animation, just updated models. Okay. Yeah, Veronica, I'm not sure either. It is pretty wild. Because I imagine in a hurricane it would just topple over. Yeah, the model is definitely updated because I think before they had the other one like dulled out.
Or establishing a city, to establish a city or on the moon or Mars. This is a vital step. Mars. Exactly. So a rapidly reusable orbital launcher or rocket is, it says a rapidly reusable rocket is required for alliteration. For getting a breakthrough in cost of access to space, that you don't throw the rockets away every flight. But another key step is refilling on orbit, so that the Starship can get to orbit with, let's say, 150 tons of payload for the Moon or Mars or beyond, and then it can get tankered to fill up its propellant tanks, and so that it can depart from low Earth orbit with 1,200 tons of propellant. This is a very big thing, so that your delta velocity is enough to transport literally 150 tons to the surface of the Moon or Mars. With full reusability and orbital refilling, which is essentially, the orbital refilling is actually a simplified version of what SpaceX does in docking with the space station. So it's actually harder to dock with the space station than it is to do orbital refilling. But in practicing in docking with the space station, SpaceX has also learned how to rendezvous and dock in orbit in a complex environment. So this is one of the other critical pieces of the puzzle needed to establish a base on the Moon and Mars, a city ultimately. And yeah, so those are the critical ingredients. So we think it would be very exciting to have a base on the Moon, even if it's just a science base. That, you know, we have, for example, we have a base at Antarctica. Many countries have bases in Antarctica for science research, and this would be an incredible area of research. So whether or not people want to live on the Moon, there's definitely a lot of science to be done. I think it's close as well. So that would be quite exciting to do. And then, of course, we can go to other places in the solar system, like Saturn. But the critical thing that we need to focus on, I think, is the fastest path to a self-sustaining city on Mars. This is the fundamental thing. As far as we know, we're the only consciousness or the only life that's out there. There might be other life, but we've seen no signs of it. People often ask me, what do you know about the aliens? And that, I'm like, man, I tell you, I'm pretty sure I'd know, if there were aliens. I have not seen any sign of aliens. So they're like, well, is the military hiding aliens in Area 51 or something, That's a popular meme. Well, let me tell you, the fastest way to increase defense funding would be to bring out, like, hey, we found an alien. People are like, more money for defense, definitely. This is guaranteed. That would be like on display in 2 seconds. So, the reality is, as far as we know, this is the only place, at least in this part of the galaxy or in the Milky Way, where there is consciousness. And it's taken a long time for us to get to this point. According to the geological records, Earth's been around for about 4.5 billion years, although it was mostly molten magma for about 500 million years. But still, several billion years with at least bacterial life and multicellular life for several 100 million years. But here's the interesting part, like, the sun is...
All right, now he's just going on about stuff. So let me see if I can fast forward. Shh.
The sun will expand and it will overheat the Earth.
I'm just scrubbing through to see
This is on
if there's like any other slides.
There's only several 100 million years left. That's all we got. Okay, several 100 million years.
I'm not seeing any other slides. I see like questions. Hey, thanks, Larry. Yeah, this is pretty cool. I know this is a repeat for some of you, especially because, I know Pamela streamed it live last night, but I needed something quick to fill the time. So I'm not seeing other slides, but I'm seeing what looks like other people popping up on stage. And we're already at 10 to 2.
The window has been opened only now. Any questions?
Oh, now he's taking questions.
Yeah.
Hi, Elon. Irene Fox with Aviation. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you for the overview. Can you tell us a little bit more details about the flight test program for this and the Mark II?
Actually, can we just turn the music off? I can't quite hear because there's music playing. Oh, excellent. No, I'm sorry. Could you probably just say that again?
Yes, thank you. Can you talk a little bit more details about the flight test program for both this Mark I and the Mark II vehicle in Florida, and what the progression is to get to orbital flight and then a test flight or a commercial mission with the full vehicle?
Sure.
Thanks.
So, yep, with any development into uncharted territory, it is difficult to predict these things with precision. But I do think things are going to move very fast. So our plan is in basically 1 to 2 months to do the 20-kilometer or 65-foot flight with Starship Mark 1. Our next flight after that might actually just be all the way to orbit with a booster and the ship. I'm giving you just literally stream of consciousness here. Most likely we would not fly to orbit with Mark 1, but we would fly to orbit with Mark 3, which will be built after Mark 1 right here. In fact, we'll start building it in about a month. So, yeah. And actually, so sorry to say this mid-question, but I did want to make sure to thank Yusaku Miyazawa for his great support. Yeah, he's awesome. Yusak 2020, that's his handle. That's a great handle. Anyway, he's a super cool dude, and he's like, putting a lot of serious resources to helping out Starship. So I want to thank him very much for that. Anyway, so yeah, just to frame things, we are going to be building ships and boosters at both Boca and the Cape as fast as we can. And each successive, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that is, accurate to within a few months. Yeah.
Hi, Elon. My name is Steve Clark. I'm with the Brownsville Herald. Back in September 2014 at the groundbreaking, you said that the first crewed interplanetary mission could possibly leave.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Could possibly leave from Boca Chica. Do you think that's still the case?
Yes, it is. I think definitely possible that the first crewed mission on Starship could leave from Boca. We actually are internally competing the Cape and Boca. So I think both places will, to the best of my knowledge, both places will launch crewed missions. So I think it is extremely likely that we will launch crewed missions from Boca, and there is at least a 50% chance that it is the first mission. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Elon, Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut.
Hey,
how are you?
How's it going? Good. Yeah,
Good.
You have great questions online.
Thanks. You have great answers.
Yeah, welcome.
So that belly flop to tail down maneuver, I
Yeah.
mean, that's something to see. Is that first one, this one right here, 20 kilometers, is it going to come in that hot and do that flip that fast right here, or is it going to be out on the drone ship? Like, that's
No,
crazy.
it's basically right where Hopper took off.
Yeah.
That's basically where it's going to take off. Within, very close to where it's just right over there. So yeah, that maneuver that you saw, it will execute now. When we get to, I think maybe Mark 3, certainly Mark 4, I think probably that will be a good time to transition to hot gas thrusters from cold gas thrusters. So using essentially compressed nitrogen gas as the cold gas thruster is a pretty low ISP, sort of 60, 70 if you're very lucky, but very closer to 60. With methox thruster, you can get, without really even trying hard, 300 ISP. Even if you just film cool the walls, without even regen cooling. If you regen cool it, 350, no problem, 360 even. So you're talking about something that's then 5 or 6 times the mass efficiency of the nitrogen thrusters that are on Mach 1. And if you have thrusters of that efficiency, then we don't need to use the Raptors to correct the horizontal velocity. Because right now it's actually, when the Raptors fire, the Raptors kick it over, but they actually accelerate the vehicle in the wrong direction. Then they have to overcorrect and then come back. Whereas if you have strong enough thrusters, you can just, using the onboard maneuvering thrusters without lighting the main engines, you can just go kick it hard, light the engine, land. That'd be, that's better. Yeah.
And then are those pressure fed then? Those
Yeah. Those would be just pressure fed, high pressure gas methox, and so you have a high pressure. CH4 bottle, high pressure O2 bottle, and then the great thing is like those they don't care what attitude you're at. You can be at any attitude, any G's, any attitude, it'll still fire. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Elon. I'm Tim Fernholz from Quarks. Thanks so much for taking the time.
You're welcome.
2 questions, if I may. One, just technical, following up on the presentation. To do useful stuff in orbit, you're going to need the booster as well as the Starship, right?
Yes. Starship cannot get to Earth orbit without the booster. But anywhere except Earth, pretty much. Well, not counting Venus. But like the Mars or the Moon, the ship, provided you have a propellant plant on Mars or Moon, the ship can easily get a single stage from the surface of the Moon all the way to the surface of Earth without a booster. So that shows you how deep, like Earth has a deep gravity well and a thick atmosphere. but definitely cannot. I mean, if we really went crazy light, you could probably do single stage to orbit, non-reusable with the ship, but that would be pointless.
Elon, I just wanted to ask, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine had a tweet last night about this presentation, concerned, I guess, about enthusiasm for SpaceX's various programs. I'm just curious if you have any comment or response to that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, from a SpaceX resource standpoint, our resources are overwhelmingly on Falcon and Dragon. That is to be clear. It was really quite a small percentage of SpaceX that did this Starship. Less than 5% of the company, basically. The really hard part that requires a lot of resources is optimizing something past the initial prototype phase and bringing it into volume production. So yeah, to be clear, like the vast majority of our resources are on Dragon and Falcon, especially Crew Dragon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Elon. Chris Gebhardt with NASA Spaceflight. How do you guys envision keeping the methane and oxygen inside the tanks from boiling off in any significant quantity during a multi-month interplanetary trip to Mars? And on a more Earth-grounded question, what's your contamination mitigation strategy since these things are being built outside in the elements and not in a factory?
Well, these are pretty far in the distance questions. These questions are relevant, but in the future years. Keeping the landing propellant cold on the way to Mars is a lot easier than it may seem, because you can essentially vacuum, just like you'd keep cryogenic propellant stored on Earth for long periods of time. You vacuum jacket it. We would essentially have header tanks that are bigger than these header tanks, and vent them to vacuum. So you would just basically have a tank inside a tank with multi-layer insulation, and this way you can keep things cryogenic for months, no problem. It requires very little energy you don't even really need to worry about boil off. You could apply some energy to cryo-cool it, but you don't really need to. You'd have a tiny amount of boil off. In vacuum, things are kind of weird. They're not like on Earth because you have no convective cooling, really, in zero-G. So you actually have the sun side of your rocket is very hot, and the not sun side of your rocket is at 3 degrees Kelvin. So it's super cold. So you just keep your cold stuff on the cold side and the hot stuff on the hot side, and this is not a problem to manage. For the long-term stuff, for sort of what's called contamination of Mars, I think this concern. First of all, we'll do everything we can to mitigate it, obviously, but at the end of the day, if you're going to send people to Mars, that's a pretty big contaminant, But I really don't think that some Earth-based bacterium is going to be able to migrate much through Mars. The thing that makes Mars very difficult is that it is both cold and has high ultraviolet. So if it was either cold or ultraviolet, you could evolve to deal with it. But the cold slows down the metabolic processes, and then the ultraviolet shreds the DNA. So you're cold and shredded. This is very difficult for things to exist on the surface of Mars, and that's why we have not found any traces of life on the surface of Mars to date. If there is any life, it'll be very deep underground, and I think very resilient. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. It's also worth noting that over time there have been meteors. There have been chunks of Earth that have been chipped off by meteors, and chunks of Mars that have been chipped off from Mars. And Earth and Mars have actually
operational commercial spaceport.
Yeah, I mean it will definitely get fancier than it currently is, because the reason it's not fancier is just because it would have taken too long to build the buildings. So since it was going to take so long to build the buildings, we just built it outside. Yeah, this is like my new thing is management by rhyming. If the schedule's long, it's wrong, and if it's tight, it's right. Yeah. It works. SR-71, fastest plane in history ever. It's also the coolest plane ever. it had no anti-missile defenses except one: accelerate. Yeah, and zero. They try to shoot it down many times. 0 successes.
Can you just give us a quick sense of what you think this area will look like in, say, 10 years when you are flying crews?
Oh, I think it'll be like a lot more buildings and a lot more stuff. Like way more stuff than is currently here. As you can tell, the wind is really quite vigorous. Like one of the things that I think will be quite important to have locally is propellant production. So trucking massive, thousands of tons of liquid oxygen to the site doesn't make a ton of sense. We should really produce the liquid oxygen here. And by the way, we have gaseous oxygen in the atmosphere, so we basically just need electricity. I forgot to mention, one of the things over time is, like for the propellant production on Mars will be completely renewable because we will use solar panels, pull the CO2 out of the atmosphere. Mars is a primarily CO2 atmosphere. Get the H2O, the water, from the ice. Mars has a massive amount of ice. You combine H2O and CO2, and you get CH4 and O2. There's a very long understood process of run it over ruthenium catalyst. This is a Sabatier process to create CH4 and O2 out of CO2 and H2O. And that same system that we developed for Mars will long-term be used on Earth. So long-term, this is like, long-term we will produce the propellant for the rockets using solar power. And pull the CO2 from Earth's atmosphere, use water, combine that to create CH4 and O2 on Earth. And so the long-term outcome will be quite sustainable and renewable for Earth and Mars.
Jeff Faust of Space News. You spent a lot of time this summer working with the FAA getting approval to do a single Starhopper flight to 150 meters. Now you're talking about flying a much bigger vehicle to much higher altitudes and ultimately flying to orbit. Where are you in the FAA in terms of getting approval for that? And will those flight opportunities be able to coexist with, say, the local residents around here?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the FAA Administrator for Space has been excellent to work with. Very forward-leaning. Really, I would just like to say thanks to the FAA for their support, actually. I mean, really, there's, minimal delays related to regulatory activity, and they've been really very reasonable, and so, the support's very much appreciated. So, I think the FAA asks, good questions and wants to make sure things are safe, as do we. And so we're going to make sure that the risk to the public is extremely, vanishingly small, almost nothing, basically. So, it's the same sort of thing that we deal with on Falcon 9 and Dragon, and has gone very well, for the 17 years that SpaceX has been around. So I feel pretty optimistic about things. I don't see any fundamental obstacles. We are working with the residents of Boca Chica Village because we think over time it's going to be quite disruptive to living in Boca Chica Village because it'll end up needing to get cleared for safety a lot of times. So I'd say probably not very. There would be just not very comforting to the Boca Chica Village. I think the actual danger to Boca Chica Village is low, but it's not tiny. So therefore, we want super tiny risk. So, probably over time, better to buy out the villages, and we've made an offer to that effect. Yeah.
Thank you, Elon. It's Tarek Malik from Space.com. And I was curious, with the design update here, if 100-person crew size for base flights is still kind of the target now, and how the life support...
Sorry, could you talk about louder? The wind is like howling in my ear, unfortunately.
Sure. Yes, with the design update here, I'm curious if the 100-person crew size target is still the main target for base crew flights and how the life support system for that is being developed for both the initial test flights and then maybe for Mr. Miyazawa's flight too in upcoming years. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really, I think you could still do 100 people. Like the pressurized volume on Starship is around 1,000 cubic meters. So if you had 100 people, you'd have 10 cubic meters per person, which is, you know, especially in like a 0G situation, that's actually quite a lot of room. Unlike a 1G situation, you only get to use one surface, really, live on one surface in a 1G situation, but in a 0G situation, you can live on 6 surfaces. You know, you can like all 6 sides of a cube. So things are way roomier than they may seem. And by the way, 1,000 cubic meters, I think, is close to what the space station pressurized volume is. So you know, Starship is like basically like launching space station pressurized volume on every flight. This is quite a lot. We can make it bigger if as needed, you know. Yeah.
Hi, Elon. Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now. Thanks for taking our questions. We see the Starship prototype here, Mark 1. You talked a little bit about how you're going to build the super heavy vehicle. Can you update us a little bit more detail about how that development is going, where exactly it'll be built, and when we might see it on a test stand or on a pad?
Sure. Yeah. Good question. So the priority is to build at least 2 Starships at each site, at Boca and the Cape, and then start building the booster. So we'll complete, you know, Mach 1 through 4 before doing Mach 1 of the booster, and then we'll do, you know, Mach 1 and Mach 2 of the boosters at the Cape and Boca. The main constraint on launching the booster is engines, because obviously the booster has a lot of engines. So spooling up the Raptor production rate is extremely important to, vital, obviously, essential to completing the booster. Doing the tanks and the legs and, say, the grid fins, that is not a constraint. Like that we can get done fast. But we need, I think we'd want to have at least probably 24 engines, but I think really at least 31 engines to launch. So you add that up, you've got a lot of engines there. You know, we need for 4 Starships, we need well, these just have 3. Mach 1 and 2 just have three Raptor engines. Mach 3 and 4 will have 6. So you add them. This looks like a lot of engines, basically, including development. Be done. It's got to be done.
Elon, hi, it's Bill Harwood with CBS News. I just wanted to follow up on an earlier question about life support systems, because that's not trivial, and obviously you're building a very sophisticated piece of hardware. Are you thinking about closed-loop regenerative systems? Are you thinking about developing these in-house, or are you looking at designs that already exist on space station, for example? And what are you shooting for initially? I know you're not going to be launching 100 people on your first flight, but what sort of a crew complement can we expect on those initial test flights, and how sophisticated does that life support system need to be? Thanks.
Yeah, I think for sure you'd want to have a regenerative life support system. So that just means you're recycling everything. You know, that's for sure important if you're on a several months journey to Mars and then you know on the surface for 18 months. Regenerative is a kind of a necessity. So I don't think it's actually super hard to do that. Relative to the spacecraft itself, the life support system is pretty straightforward. Yeah, you just got to take, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You got to take out the water vapor and the CO2, convert that back to O2. It's not super hard. the early flights of Starship would not have any people on board. It would just be in automatic mode. It would only be later flights that would have people on board. So I think like even the first flights to Mars, we would send at least a couple of ships, have them just land automatically before sending people. Yeah.
Take about 2 more questions.
Hi, Elon. Eric Berger with Ars Technica. I would just argue the X-15 was the coolest plane of all time. And my question, I guess, is, we're not really used to seeing hardware built in less than a year. Can you talk about the timeline for this vehicle, like when you started fabricating it and how you went so quickly on it? Thank you.
Actually, I'm not sure. I think like up until October last year, we were pursuing a completely different design. So it was really... I switched the design to steel, I think, approximately maybe October last year. And then it's like, okay, so what's the fastest we can build a steel, ship in Texas? And then I think we built it in about 4 months or something, maybe 5 months. And then the ship, I think I'm not sure exactly when we started building it, but maybe about 4 months ago that we started building the ship, maybe 5. So it's been 4 or 5 months since we started building the ship from nothing, I think. Yeah, something like that.
And how did you go so fast?
Well, I have this mantra called, if the schedule's long, it's wrong. If it's tight, it's right. Yeah. And just basically just go recursive improvement on schedule. And say with feedback loop, did this make it go faster? Okay, if it didn't, we're going to need to fix it. If the design takes a long time to build, it's the wrong design. This is the fundamental thing. Over and over, it's like the tendency is to complicate things. And I have another thing, which is like the best part is no part. The best process is no process. It weighs nothing, costs nothing, can't go wrong. So, as obvious as that sounds, the best part is no part. Like the thing I'm most impressed with when I have the design meetings at SpaceX is, what did you undesign? Undesigning is the best thing. Just delete it. That's the best thing. Yeah.
Hey, Elon. Robin here from supercluster.com. My question is about potential fund synergy between SpaceX and your other projects. 1, is there a concept for a Tesla Mars rover? 2, are you going to be launching... Yeah, is there a concept already?
Well, actually, the Teslas will work on Mars, If you can just drive them pretty much. Because electric cars don't need oxygen, they don't need air. So you can just drive them around, no problem.
Are you going to bring a boring machine to the moon or Mars?
I think that would be a good idea.
Me too.
Yeah, because you could just make as much room as you want underground, and you protect it from radiation and everything, and you can probably use the materials for building. And you need to mine ice and dirt anyway, so why not? Totally.
Thanks, Elon. And I don't believe you about the aliens.
I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I hope they're well, if they are here, I hope they're nice. They haven't killed us yet, so they must be not that bad. All right, any other questions?
Just one? Okay. Hi, Elon. I'm Martin Avignon from the SpaceX subreddit. We've crowdsourced a few questions. It sounds like I only have time for one, but oh well. I was wondering, could you elaborate on the number of engines that will be used for the boost back and entry burns on Starship, and what the dry landing weight of the Super Heavy will be?
Oh yeah, so Starship wouldn't really. There's the 20-kilometer thing, which is mostly. It's going to have 3 engines, but you only really need either 2 of them to work at any given point in time. But the ship, when it's in orbital operation, will only need a tiny bit of impulse to deorbit. You need a very tiny, less than 5% of the mass of the vehicle is needed to deorbit. So you just like really puff one of the engines, and the main thing is like trying to get the control. Like, how do you shut off the thrust precisely, really precisely, so that you don't over or undershoot your target. And then yeah. For the booster has 7 engines that gimbal, and then the rest, whether it's a total of 31 or 37, are fixed. The fixed engines would not be used for boost back. So only the center 7 would be used for boost back. And then I really want to try to avoid an entry burn, if at all possible. That would, because that would, no, you have to have a high, the system has to be capable of a very high Q entry in order to avoid an entry burn. But I think we might be able to make the booster buff enough that it doesn't need an entry burn, hopefully. So then it just needs a landing burn.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming. Hope you enjoyed it.
All right. So that was a thing. Let's see if I can find my OBS real quick. So that was a thing. That was a good idea, actually. Hey! I think they missed me streaming this week. We were talking about plants and life support systems in the chat during this, and DPI says different lighting environments would require different shelves or container, but are doable if you have more than one. Yeah, it's doable. Some plants play nice with others and could use the same day-night cycle, and you could potentially put, I'm trying to think. Like, you could grow tomatoes and peppers together, for example, in the same container. Their flower and fruiting cycles might be a little different, but I think you could pull it off. You could do a bunch of different greens in one container. They need a different whole set of temperatures than peppers. Peppers and tomatoes only bloom and fruit at a certain temperature. Greens like lettuce and spinach and cabbage actually bolt and taste. By bolt, I mean they send up a flower stalk to reproduce, and as somebody that wants to eat the plant, you don't want that. As somebody that wants the plant to reproduce, you do want that. So, yeah. Potatoes are tricky to do in... potatoes and root vegetables are tricky to do in hydroponics. They are mostly due to the nature of how they grow and how I kind of see the hydroponics being used as more of like a mist thing. Grain can probably be due. Yeah, DPI says mangoes only produce fruit when pollination happens below 10 degrees Celsius, but optimal growth temperature is 28 degrees Celsius. Yeah, plants are weird. Yeah. Noel points out that potatoes are pomme de terre, not pomme de l'eau. De l'eau? De l'eau. My French is terrible. Coffee. I'm not entirely too sure how coffee or tea grows. I know they grow... Coffee comes from trees, if you didn't know that, and tea comes from essentially bushes. And these are plants that take quite some time to mature. So I don't know if anybody has experimented with growing tea bushes or coffee plants in hydroponics, because that's not usually something you see with trees. Delou. Ah, thank you. You don't typically see trees in hydroponics. You don't typically see bushes in hydroponics. You typically see de l'eau. Thank you. I always forget. I always forget my French pronunciation. So, yeah. I haven't really looked too much into hydroponics in a while, but typically, like, the only perennial I know that can be grown... I know, Tinker. The only perennial that, you know, that I know of being grown in hydroponics is tomatoes, and in most places in the US, tomatoes are grown as annuals anyways. So, yeah, I don't know how, like, trees and bushes and stuff handles hydroponics. They may need to be in a thing called rock wool. They might just need to be, because I also don't see anything other than rock wool being used or exposed roots to water being used. Rock wool is just this kind of, it kind of is what it sounds like. It's this fabric, I almost want to say, that can be really thick and is very porous, like a really hard sponge, and roots can grow in there. It can also be crumbled down and things like that nature. And I think trees, no, like, I know that works well for like greens and things of that nature. Yeah, it's kind of, it kind of is like floral foam, but bigger pores. Isn't there rock wool insulation? I think there is. I think that is indeed a thing. Spun molten rock. Thank you, Sammy. I'm glad you guys know what I'm talking about. Like glass wool? Kind of. But, you know, it's not going to kill you if you inhale it, I think. Or is that one of the things you need to... I think rock wool and perlite, they want you to handle wet. Like fiberglass insulation, but rock. Gotcha. And don't inhale rock wool particles. Yeah. Work with it wet, simply so you don't have, like, airborne particles. Because the other thing that's used in hydroponics are these, like, clay beads. And the problem with those is that if you're in microgravity, there's no gravity holding them down. So I could see, like, a net being used to hold them in place. But I think in, like, Antarctica, they just put, like, these little plugs in the thing. So, yeah, that was a whole lot of, like, plant growing stuff. I'm not sure how much CO2 the plants remove from, like, the plant experiments have removed on the ISS. I'm sure it's better than nothing because they're not contributing to the CO2 load, but I don't think plants can be used to completely replace the CO2 scrubbers. Yeah, closed ecosystems are tricky. They really are, because if something goes wrong, which something will go wrong, yeah. And make it rain, Tinker. So, that's pretty much all I have for you today. I do have the files downloaded. We will start working on those next week. That is for NGC 4038. What's the science on mushroom food? What do you mean by mushroom food, Sammy? Are you talking about eating mushrooms as food, or using like mushroom compost as hydroponics, or growing mushrooms? Because these are all very different things. Growing mushrooms, I think, can probably be done in... I don't know if it can be done in microgravity. I don't have any experience with growing mushrooms. I have some experience with hydroponics. Portobello steaks. And you actually do not want to put coffee... You don't want to put coffee beans in your compost. Although you guys are saying you can grow mushrooms and use coffee, which I guess is a good use for it. Caffeine, which we like because it's a stimulant, I think actually prevents other plants from growing and competing with the coffee trees. So mushrooms, certain species of mushrooms might be like, we don't care, but I would not put use coffee beans in your compost, I'd put it in places where you don't want plants. So, yeah. Genetically changed to be more nutritious as possible as far as I know. With selective, I don't know much about growing mushrooms and the culture of mushrooms. I do know that selective breeding over time can change, is considered genetically changing. You might be talking about faster method using CRISPR. I don't know. People asking whether mushrooms grown from coffee taste like coffee, and apparently the answer is no. Caffeine can be either synthesized, I think it can be synthesized or purified. So, like, there's caffeine powder, there's caffeine capsules. I could see there being a bit of caffeine powder being loaded and being like, this is what you all get for your entire trip. So, Horrible Hog says, strange, we compost our coffee grounds. You might compost you might compost enough stuff where adding the tiny bit of whatever caffeine is left in there doesn't affect it negatively. I don't compost at all. I had been dumping my coffee beans in the garden, and now I don't. So please answer all the science. I don't know all the science. That's the problem, y'all. Would Cheerios be a good space food? Yes and no. Crumbs. Cheerios do have crumbs, and you don't want crumbs. Coffee is before than caffeine. Coffee is better than caffeine. Yes, we do need yeast for B12. And I'm sure eventually somebody will figure out how to brew beer or wine or some alcoholic drink in space eventually. And we do need yeast for that. So, yeah. Cheerios soaked in milk would work. Kind of. I mean, you want to store them separate. You don't want soggy Cheerios. Hereby demand the invention of crumb-free Cheerios, says Lagatter. Sammy says, all hail the fungal food groups. Horrible Hog says, then again, you don't want plants growing in your compost. This is very true. I once tried to overwinter a couple tomato plants in the university's greenhouse, and I pulled off a sucker, one of the side shoots. It's kind of like that. And pulled off a sucker, didn't let it sit and dry and die out next to the plant or anything. I just immediately tossed it in their compost, and next thing I know, a couple months later, there's this huge tomato vine growing in the compost bin. I was highly amused. Milk on Mars is but a distant dream. I mean, I think a lot of those things are just not going to be a thing. Powdered, I could see a lot of powdered stuff that has to be rehydrated. But having straight up, milk and things. Even soybean milk, you have to grow the soybeans. Coconut milk, you have to grow the coconuts or carry the coconuts. So, yeah. Guys say there's a lot of Mars fiction that's very cheesy. I bet. We can ship a cow in there. I don't know about a whole cow. Cows are big. We don't know how a cow would react to 0G. Although I suppose, depending on how long the trip is, I suppose if we put livestock in those fake uteruses, if we did it right and the trip was short enough, I think that would work. And then you just have baby animals. Does the fake uteruses work? So, yeah, it is indeed hard to milk a cow in 0G. But that's how I see it. You put, I just realized my game and stuff is all messed up. You would put, essentially embryos in the fake uteruses, the artificial uteruses that do work, and let them develop during the trip, which that would be an interesting thing. And you'd have to do multiple to make sure you had like enough of a couple genders, because cows and goats don't produce milk in without a pregnancy happening. Yes, Larry Weird. Fake uteruses are a thing. Artificial wombs are indeed a thing. I've seen some lamb fetuses grow in them, and it's kind of wild. I don't think they're doing anything, quote, to term yet, because there's some ethical concerns. But they have been tested. I don't think anything's been brought full to term, but they have been tested. So, does fetal development require gravity? Oh shoot, I didn't think about that. Yeah. I don't know. And I don't know if there's been enough like rodent studies on the ISS to check that. They have done, because there was literally a this is bothering me. Give me 1 second. Make sure I'm turning the right knob. There has been a okay, that should work better. There's literally an astronaut that is a veterinarian, and he did say that there were certain things that you learn that like young mice learned in gravity or with gravity that they didn't learn in a microgravity environment. So yeah, he was pretty cool. So I don't know a whole lot about animals in space. That's just how I would kind of do it. I don't know if we can like do a fake centrifuge and keep, you know, the embryos and their artificial uteruses in some sort of gravity while we make the trip. But like, that's kind of how I see all this happening and working is embryos, artificial wombs, and some sort of artificial gravity while they're developing, which means they'd have to be spun. I'm sure that's not a problem. Not at all. Not at all. Blackadder says eats his calcium. YYZ says, I'd say yes, we do require yes to fetal development requiring gravity, because we need gravity for bone density. Yes. Yes. And it's not like you can just tell a baby calf to like exercise. So tether two starships together and spin them. Sammy says Space Odyssey spaceship setup. Yeah. Panel was amazing. I'm assuming you're talking about the TwitchCon or when we had the veterinarian astronaut on. The veterinarian astronaut was pretty cool. But hello, Uncle Bill. Yeah, things and stuff. I know, Tinker. Tinker just wants Cheerios. Oh, the TKF panel on TwitchCon. Yeah. I was on vacation like all last week, and I know TKF stuff is still happening, but oh shoot, you're right, YYZ. We totally need gravity for processes in birth, literally to exit the body, which is why I was saying the artificial wombs, because when they reach maturity, you just kind of remove them from the artificial womb. But I would hope that, you know, it would all be planned so that, you know, you didn't start the birth until you got to Mars. I forget how long it's supposed to take people to get to Mars. I can't remember if it's like a couple months or if it's a couple years. Yeah. maybe even, because we have the technology, maybe even fertilizing or freezing the embryo before letting it do the thing. So 6 to 9 months probably. How long does it take for a cow to develop? It gives it to me in days. Cows are pregnant for 283 days. Another thing says about 9 months. So 38 to 44 weeks after the conception process has been complete. So, yeah. Yeah. Maybe not a cow, but a goat. No drinking human milk. Yeah, YYZ, maybe this would be something better. Just freeze the embryos, keep them frozen for the trip. Unfreeze them and then do the artificial, thing there, because I feel like we'd have a better chance of shielding the frozen embryos from radiation, because we could probably put them in like something lead lined. So, all right, so this is getting a little weird. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this all off before it gets even weirder. I'm like, where did I put the thing? I mean, y'all are great, but y'all are weird. So I'm gonna, here's how we're gonna do this. I'm going to roll the credits, and we're gonna come back and we're going to chat a bit more, because I know a couple of you have asked for updates. So I'm gonna roll the credits. It'll be the official end of the episode, and then we'll just sit here and chat for a little bit. Because yeah. So, yeah, this has all, I'm just not even, Horrible Hog, you're not wrong, but I'm not letting it through. Yeah, I got it. So this has been a production of PSI. It's Planetary Science Institute, working in collaboration with Youngstown State University here in Youngstown. I think it's okay outside. Is fall here yet? I'm not sure. Ohio. PSI is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, which is fancy speak for your donations are tax deductible where laws allow. Wrong. There we go. We are brought to you by you, so thank you for all of your support, your donations, your bits, your subs, your all of it. Thank you. Thank you for helping to pay my salary, because this is one of the ways I get paid. What else, Tinkerbell? The dogs are always grateful for bits too. Oh yeah, we have a Patreon. Fun thing about our Patreon that I know for sure is that you get emailed in your inbox the essentially transcript from Daily Space. That's Monday through Friday. Sunday is, hey, there we go. Make it rain. Sunday is this Science Sunday with me. Hi, Annie. Where usually we color space telescope stuff, but you know, sometimes it's other stuff, other sciencey stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. Whew. But yeah. I think that's all the things I'm required to say. We do have a podcast, we do have a YouTube channel. Please subscribe to both. And yeah, things and stuff and things. I'm gonna roll the credits and I will see you on the other side. T-shirts, sciencey stuff. We can make that happen. We can make that happen. All right, let's do this. You all have been great. Having a wonderful insert time of day here.